Greg Sankey always uses it because he's from upstate New York, and I think it's just such a great sports analogy is skate to where the puck's going to be, not to where it is. And you just always got to look and read and better yourself and try to be prepared when that change comes.
Welcome to the Navigating Sports Business podcast, where we uncover insights from the most prominent leaders in our industry. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Scott Woodward, the Director of Athletics at LSU. Scott, I think we've known each other for about 6 years now, probably, since we started working with the SEC. But you've known AJ, our founder, many more years than that, dating back to your, days as an AD at Washington, his alma mater. And you've always been one of our favorite people to talk to and work with. So I'm excited to be able to chat today and let the whole world hear your brilliance.
I don't know about that, but thanks for having me. An honor to be here with you guys. And, despite having to work with AJ, Jeff, I think the world is. I say that as a joke. Jeff, you're the best in the business, and we really appreciate working with you. And we did at the conference level, and you did hard, good analysis for us. And it was always great working with you because you always gave us a straight, good, honest assessment.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. You yourself, one of the all-time straight shooters, I feel like, in our business. So there's a lot I want to ask you about today. But I do kind of want to start at the beginning because the LSU AD being a boy from Baton Rouge is kind of a fairy tale story, or it seems. Can you tell us about your earliest memories of LSU athletics?
Yeah, it's been reported when I was 9 or 10 years old, I sold peanuts in Tiger Stadium in the early 70s. And so you can guess my age now. But it was kind of life-altering experience because I noticed two things: how important LSU athletics and particularly football was to the state and to the citizens and to the fans and everyone involved. But more importantly than that, and I noticed, especially as I spent time there and I was kind of aware of what was happening, people would bring their children and aspire to say, hey, this is what I want. I want you to come to school here. I want you to enjoy these Saturday nights. More importantly, I want you to be educated. This is a fabulous state institution. And it was such a gateway and such a fine thing to see. And I just always took that great admiration and observation and just said, hey, this is really, really special. And I was lucky to see it at a young age.
Was there ever a moment where you considered not attending LSU for undergrad?
Not really. I went to a parochial school, all-male Catholic school in Baton Rouge, and 90-something% of us just matriculated to LSU. It was like we went from the 12th to the 13th grade. That's how I viewed it, and so the answer is not seriously.
In a moment, I want to cover kind of your path to this role, which is not conventional, I don't think, compared to a lot of ADs. But thinking back to college, was there ever a moment where you thought, hey, one day I want to work here, one day I want to be a part of LSU athletics?
Yeah, it didn't really come to my mind as athletics, but it did come to my mind as, hey, I would really like to work for the university. And that opportunity, which has been reported a lot, came. A guy named Mark Emmert came to town as chancellor of LSU. And I went and pitched him to represent LSU doing their PR and government relations. And he made me wait a couple of weeks, and he said, I got good news and bad news for you, as the story goes. He says, you're hired. That's the good news. The bad news is I want you full time. And the truth of the story is I sold my Mercedes-Benz, bought a Honda Accord, and went to work for LSU. And But it was a labor of love, you know, it was something that I wanted to do. My children are on campus at a K through 12 school. It's run by the university called University Laboratory School. We lived, you know, a mile and a half from campus, and it was just like, hey, this is a perfect timing for me to do something. And you know, I was hired coincidentally as the same time a guy named Nick Saban was, 2000, and was it was a hell of an experience for me. Uh, Good time.
The 15 years prior, you're the co-founder of a governmental and PR firm, and a successful one. Uh, what did that experience teach you, and how have you leaned on that a lot since you got into athletics?
Yeah, you have to, because you're accountable to your clients who have a stake in what they're doing, whether it's an investment, and you're essentially protecting that asset for that client, and you know, it was about building and helping that asset, and it was the same kind of skill set, protecting and building a good reputation for a university. Had a lot of similarities. But what's even greater for us is that when you have a love affair with a university, which I did because it transformed my life as an undergraduate, it's like, hey, this is an easy sell for me.
There's so much now where right athletics and politics intersect. Back then, at the PR firm, did you ever have any athletics involved clients or cases, or was it all strictly government, politics, and other topics?
Yeah, our main business was corporate clients, Fortune 500 clients, and no really athletics. But everyone talks about politics, and and forgets that you know politics comes from Greek and Latin polis, which is people, and there's the same thing. There's politics in everything we do, whether it's work or home or dealing with family. It's understanding human nature and dealing with it, and that's what I took to task and brought with me, whether it is to work or just dealing with people in general.
You mentioned Mark Emmert. He then goes to Washington and convinces you to come with, to leave LSU. How and why did you make that decision?
Here again, I had a great point in my life where uh, my wife and I were becoming empty nesters, and it was a great opportunity because I was always very curious about uh, public institutions that did it at a high level, and obviously Washington is in that boat. And I said, heck, what a great town, and going to see Seattle, with the idea that I always wanted to come back to Louisiana one way or the other. But I went out there with an open mind of learning and helping and hoping that my skills advocating could benefit a great institution like University of Washington. And so that's how I did it. And when Mark, you know, approached me and made the offer, it was like a no-brainer. Yeah, I want to do this, and I didn't hem and haw. I wanted to go and get after it right away.
And is it right that you were a representative for him to athletics at first for a few years, but then the interim AD need comes about? Did he come to you and say, what do you think? Or did you go to him and say, I think I could do this, or I want to do this?
I left out the piece at LSU. Hey, I was doing relations, both federal, state, and doing corporate relations. And, a couple months into the job, Mark goes, hey, two things can get a Southern president/chancellor in trouble at a university, and that's a scandal. He goes, I promise you that I'm lying. And he goes, athletics. I need you to pay attention to that for me. And we had some dysfunction in our athletic department. And so I was the guy who had the liaison for Mark to Coach Saban and to the athletic department. And that's how I kind of got my feet wet. So fast forward, included the same role in my portfolio at University of Washington. So that's how I got involved and interested in politics, because kind of was forced to. But you know, it turned into, here again, something that I really enjoyed.
At Washington, you very quickly have a coaching hire to make. Once you're the AD, you hire Steve Sarkisian, which is a big hire at that time. And then that doesn't work out the way you hope, but then you are the man who finally gets Chris Peterson to leave Boise State. And we'll talk about your coaching hires in a moment, because I think very early on you established that that would be part of your MO, is making those big coaching hires. How do you woo Chris to finally leave Boise and come to Washington?
You know, everyone thinks that I have some secret potion or some magic. There's not. It's timing, it's coincidence, it's being prepared. And I think, you know, the things that we did as a department and staff to get University of Washington back, which Steve Sarkisian did a very good job of, establishing a program that was very much in the doldrums for about a decade, getting hope back up and getting going. And obviously him leaving the USC was not a surprise, but it was like, what's going on here? And can we improve and do better? And I think we did in getting a guy like Chris Peterson. No offense to Steve. Steve's a top-notch, world-class coach. But Chris Peterson's, in my opinion, is a once-in-a-lifetime guy. And Chris, being from Northern California and having spent most of his career in the Northwest, it was just one of the few places that he would be interested in. And we had built a brand-new stadium. Our program was on the uptick. And I think he had felt like he had done enough in Boise long enough, and it was just good timing for us, and hopefully for him, to come and do what he did and have the success that he had at University of Washington.
So at A&M, you hired Jimbo Fisher from FSU, Buzz Williams for basketball from Marquette. At LSU, you've obviously hired Brian Kelly for football, Kim Mulkey, women's basketball. These huge names that, like, when the news breaks, I think a lot of the fan bases and the broader media world are kind of, you know, wide-eyed, jaw drops. Can you share your philosophy for and your approach to searching for a coach? How do you go about it?
Yeah, I feel like there's no limitations. So either it's naive or stupid, one, but that, hey, you just go after the best you could get. And that's how I knew how to. And first and foremost, you have to have a parallel vision with your stakeholders, your president, your board, and your fan base. It's like, hey, this is what you want to do. This is what I'm willing to go do. It's not me autocratically or single-handedly making these decisions. I know how to do it, and I have an opinion about it, but it has to be done together. And in all cases, I said, hey, you wanted to do this, and let me go do it. And so, you know, you don't always get what you want, and rejection does not bother me, but you go after the best that you think you can get. And we have different ways of doing it, and it's a case-by-case basis. But for me, 99% of it is believing in, quote, the institution or product that you work for. And I believed in University of Washington. I believed in Texas A&M. And obviously, I believe in my alma mater, LSU, more than anyone will ever know. And so when you have that going for you, think coaches and candidates understand the realness for it, because they can see through it and they can see what's happening. And I just think, you know, just being gritty and being, you know, relentless and about going after what and who you want, and that you have a a vision and that you have a commitment to winning. And I think every place I've been that we've shown that as a staff, that's what we want to do. And we want to be great at everything.
I've come to know you as someone who cares about the analytics and wants to look at metrics and wants all the information, I think, possible before you have that decision. Beyond obviously looking at wins and losses and what somebody's done at the program they're at, are there other either measurable, quantifiable things you look at, or are there other qualitative, softer things that you're looking at when you're trying to figure out who's the right fit and who am I going to invest in? Who am I going to bet on?
Yeah, great question, Jeff, because I've always heard it from really good doctors that there's the art of medicine and there's the science of medicine. You call it quantitative versus qualitative, objective versus subjective. Good people or even not so good people, analysis, it's just too ubiquitous. It's out there. You know wins and losses, you know records, you know what's happening, and you can see all that and analyze it. But then there is a very important qualitative piece to it. And, you know, what and how it's been done and how it's been perceived. And that's an important thing for the decision at the end of the day. One coach you didn't mention, and I'll just tell it to you, and here again, it's not a slight to all the coaches that I've hired. Jay Johnson, our national championship winning baseball coach we hired from Arizona, is probably one of the best interviews that I've ever done and ever seen, as far as being prepared, as far as wanting the job, knowing what and how to do it and where it was. And to a person, there were 3 people involved on my senior staff, and it was like, this is the guy. As soon as he walked out of the room, we knew it, and that very rarely happens. And so here again, it's process, but it's also, I think the analytics are the foundation and the base, Jeff, of where you have to have good candidates. And then you have to see if they jive with your vision and with your university's vision of what and how they fit and how they're going to be successful. And we don't always get it right. I'm not omnipotent. I'm not perfect. But you try to do it with as good of knowledge and with some instinctual qualities as well when you're making these hires.
I'm kind of dwelling on this topic in part because back to the comment you made about a Southern president gets in trouble for scandals or athletics. I feel like an AD can do everything right on the business side, everything. But you make a couple bad coaching hires in high profile spots and you can be out of a job. I mean, it really is what most of at least the public is looking at first and foremost, right? Do you have, I guess, moments where you have that coaching decision and you're not sure and you use an outside search firm or you go to, I don't know, a peer and pick their brain? Or do you feel like this is an area where you know what you want, you go out and get it, you don't need the help that I think a lot of ADs probably understandably, go hire or go lean on?
Yeah, it's all of the above. When you're making hires, you trust people that you've been involved with most of your career. You trust your senior staff who you have and who you've been through. And at the end of the day, you trust your instincts. And when you do that, fine with it. And you go to bed feeling, fine with that. Because, like I said, there's no such thing as perfection. You just swing and you do what you want to do because it's such an important part of the university. But I don't worry about that for the most part. So, of course, you're always concerned, but you don't let it obsess you and take you off your task.
Once you have a big name coach, how do you manage that relationship? They're paid a lot of money. They often have big personalities. Those personalities can often be very different from one to the next. And there's no shortage of stories out there of relationships that go south between an AD and a big coach they hire. How do you approach it?
Yeah. I look at it a lot differently than most people do in the business. I don't lord over them. Like I told you, I use the word autocrat. I'm not an autocratic leader. I'm a consensus builder, and I view myself, and I've used the analogy before, I'm more of like an executive producer of a I put talent together. I manage a budget. I have a lot of stakeholders, whether it's investors or as season ticket holders and donors and board members, citizens of the state, and I'm accountable to them. And so when I come in and you hire a guy who makes, I don't know, name it 3, 4, 5x more than you don't lord over him. You collaborate with him, just like a producer of a film collaborates with his director and his talent in a film. You say, hey, let's get the best product out there and how can we do it together? And I've always done it that way. And you have issues, certainly. You have confrontations, but for the most part, if you're doing it daily, you understand what you want and what they want, you have a good outcome.
That executive producer role seems from the outside like it's getting harder and harder because you have NIL, you have the transfer portal, you have all the ramifications of the house settlement. It's a more and more complex job.
Yeah, I'm different. I embrace it, and change does not bother me. I look forward to it. Like an executive producer, like your business, Jeff, when anything does, it changes. You used to be able to only do a film in a Hollywood studio with, multi-million-dollar editing machines and multi-million-dollar cameras and all that stuff. Now you can do a full feature film on an iPhone and an iPad, and the game's changed for them. It's changed for us. It's changed for you. I mean, you can do quantitative analysis, on your laptop that would have taken probably when you're in school, mega storage to do. Things just change, and you have to accept that. And, back to my education, and I use the quote all the time from Machiavelli, there's opportunity in chaos. And I just always think there's good opportunity. Not sound crude, but it's going to be crude. I don't piss and moan about it. I just proceed. It's the job I've taken, and it's what I do.
In this NIL era, one opportunity that presented itself for you and LSU was maybe the first, I hope I'm right in saying this, maybe the first mega star in this NIL and social media era, which was Livvy Dunne on the gymnastics team. At what point did you realize, oh, this is more than just another student athlete who has a little bit of a following? Like, this is a phenomenon kind of taking off.
I'm sitting here in a room that we build your brand for our student athletes and former student athletes. And I'm looking at the wall at Jade Daniels, at Livvy Dunne, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Marcus Spears, Ryan Clark, Odell Beckham Jr., Devin White. You just see what we've done here in football, Brian Thomas, and we encourage it. It's part of our gestalt, part of our DNA. Hey, you're here to grow and grow who you are in your brain. We just always embrace it here, whether it's Shaquille, giving us credit for being the genesis of a place where he could understand himself and where he could build a brand and build who he is and be Shaq. It's whether it's Olivia Dunne. You're going to have the opportunity and you're going to have the time to do it here. I think we've proven that. And I think we're the best in the business in brand management and having, quote, the hottest brand in the country in collegiate athletics. And because we never shunned it, we always embraced it and we celebrated it.
What advice would you have for the next athletic department or another athletic department that has an athlete who starts to build that kind of following that's almost transcending college sports?
Embrace it, love it, enjoy it, go along for the ride. They're going to take your university with you in a good way if they have a great experience. And the way you're going to have a great experience is by you doing that and helping them every way you can. Because whether they're going to the moon as an astronaut and majoring in aeronautical engineering, or whether they're throwing, Super Bowl touchdowns, you just want to be there to help them and be there to help them no matter what and how they do that.
From a tangible, standpoint, does that mean you're going to someone like Livvy Dunne and saying, hey, here are resources we have, tap into them whenever you need them. We want to help you in any way you can? Are you bringing creative ideas to her about things that you want to do? How does it, when you say embrace that, I'm curious what that means from like a day-to-day or a real tangible standpoint.
Well, let me make it clear. One size doesn't fit all. We've probably learned more from Olivia than she has from us. Yes. And we've helped her and she's helped us. And that's what you want. But there's been people that have been neophytes that are not good at it, and we've helped them become good at it. And so this is just a place where, hey, wherever you are in your talent and in your brand, we're gonna work with you, whether as a coach of a team or whether it's our creative and marketing people or our social media people. We're gonna help you be the best you can be.
Zooming out a bit on athletic departments as a whole in this time of change, you have Clemson announcing Clemson Ventures and getting that set up as this outside commercial arm. You have Kentucky more recently with, the creation of an LLC for athletics. Do you think this is the route that most athletic departments will need to go in this rev share era where kind of commercialization and nimbleness and no red tape and, I guess the professionalization in some sense of collegiate athletics will be more and more necessary?
Yes and no. I mean, this is nothing new. Florida's been operating this way for decades. We've been doing it in a halfway manner here. Tiger Athletic Foundation does all of our fundraising and most of our capital projects. So there's hybrids, there's ways to do it, but we're going to be creative and be more nimble on what and how we can maximize and how we can leverage what we do at athletics instead of just doing it traditionally the way we've done it, leveraging it, working at joint opportunities, public-private partnerships. There's all kinds of ways to be creative to do it, knowing that you don't have to give everything away. Then, I would just caution anyone in the business, be careful and make sure that what you're getting is worth it and that you have a lot of eyeballs looking at it when you do joint ventures or things that are outside the traditional methods.
You have such a glass half full positive view of all of this and the change and embracing it. And I think it's interesting that you have kind of kept that view even as this period of uncertainty just seems to drag and drag. And like maybe, okay, House is ratified and maybe we get some stability and maybe college athletics is out of the courts for a while, but we don't really know. And I'm just curious, do you ever have moments where the uncertainty is frustrating or where you do get impatient to get to a place where, okay, the rules are all known and the playing field has been established and we're back to SEC meetings that are a lot more about our championships and a lot less about the latest legal updates?
Of course I do. It frustrates the hell out of me. It's tiresome. It's burdensome. But here, to use that crude term, I'm not going to piss and moan about it. I'm going to look at it half full, and I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to go with it because it's the cards that are dealt to us. I don't know. I'm just always been that way and always look at it positively but it is exhausting. The most exhausting thing is fighting your own team, whether it's the NCAA or the SEC or people inside your university. You always have to have the same. And, that's why I have such a great relationship with Greg Sankey and my president and our board, is because we have to pull this train in the right direction, because it's hard enough beating Georgia, Bama, Texas A&M. That's where my focus needs to be, not on, worrying about stuff that really doesn't matter when it comes to competing and giving our student athletes a great experience. And, that's where I try to keep the focus. Hell, I get frustrated, mad. So does everyone else. You have a job, Mine's no different than anyone else's. Everyone thinks it's so hard. It's no different than yours. It's no different than the problems that any other person that works does. Whether you work for the man, we all work for the man, and we all do something. And that's how I look at it. I love what I do, but
When you look 10 years from now, 2035, college athletics, any crystal ball predictions? Everybody seems to have a view or an opinion of whether things will only change a small amount incrementally or whether there will be really big, landscape shifting change. Do you have an opinion on where we are 10 years from now? What changes? What you think?
I really don't. I'm going to go back to history. Other than probably religious institutions in this country, universities have been the most long-standing, successful enterprises, or, as I said, institutions in this country, and for good reason. And they don't change on the dime, and they're super tankers. You can push them this way a little bit, but you're not going to go 180. And so I just warn everyone, try to guess what it's going to be like or what's going to happen. I don't know. I really don't. That'd be like me asking you, Jeff, how's AI going to change your business? You and I could talk about that for 2 hours. You don't know. You guess, but you don't know. And anyone that does is lying. But just be prepared for it. It will be changed. I promise you that. It will be different. It's not going to be my grandfather's or father's athletic department. It's going to be different. And so either embrace it or get out. And that's my attitude. Greg Sankey always uses it because he's from upstate New York. And I think it's just such a great sports analogy, is skate to where the puck's going to be, not to where it is. And you just always got to look and read and better yourself and try to be prepared when that change comes. Don't, again, piss and moan about it.
In getting to know you a bit over the years, you're a renaissance man of sorts when it comes to the topics you like to, I think, devour and discuss, and, history, religion, politics. We obviously talked about your background even before athletics. I think we had a call with you recently where Tatu on our team is from Finland, and we started talking about revenue generation in college athletics and found ourselves talking about geopolitics in Eastern Europe. And I would just love to hear more about, you're a big wine guy as well. I know you're very passionate about wine. Can you share a little more about your interests outside of athletics and kind of when you're not doing your job, how you're spending your time?
Yeah. I'm from South Louisiana, for God's sake, Jeff. You got to be a wannabe bon vivant. You eat good food and drink good wine and enjoy life, as we say down here. So it's just always been what it's about. And, I was never the smartest guy in the class, and I was never, uncommon to what people think. I always had to work, and I worked hard. And part of that working and seeing is I became a voracious reader and know that I had to just always better myself. And I always tell people when they ask me for advice, what can I do? I said, get smarter and learn how to communicate and write. And for what you do, Jeff, and I tell kids this all the time, learn how to manipulate a spreadsheet, just do things that are basic in life. But God, please, if anyone's listening to this young, read. We don't do enough of it, and that's not just getting down the rat hole of social media or that tunnel. Read and read about things that will make you smarter, and that's what's always done for me, and just having a curiosity and always having drive to get smarter and to know more and to be better. And I guess it's driven in me hard because my great grandparents got out of the woods and the sawmills of Western Louisiana and went to college and became teachers and educators. And I'm lucky that I guess I got that genetic predisposition.
I was just going to ask, what did your parents do for work? Does this come from them?
Yeah, it does. My mother was an educator in my early before she started raising us, and my father was a dentist. One of 2 or 3 people out of his high school class that went to college, and so education mattered, and it mattered to everyone I was around. And life of the curious mind was something that I saw and have lived by.
What are you curious about now? Is there anything you're studying or learning or reading that's new or different?
I just finished a book called Shadows of War, which is about keeping the Nazis out of the Middle East, which is fascinating. And kind of, you would appreciate this, Jeff, how they used and broke the Enigma machine from the Germans in London and in Washington. And it was fascinating for me to relook at and relearn. And so that's my latest. I finished it last night. Matter of fact, I was probably bleary-eyed today. But it's just always curiosity. History and nonfiction makes me very curious. And everyone always asks, what are you reading and what am I doing? That was my latest. And always, as you well know, we talked about before, I'm a big fan of the Stoics and keep Marcus Aurelius's meditations close by at all times to refer to them.
Maybe that's the answer to my next question, but you mentioned your advice to young people would be read. If there's one book a young person right now listening to this should pick up next, is there something you would tell them to start with?
Yeah, that would probably be it. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. It's a great lesson in life and about a guy who was a fabulous leader, but a good human being, and the trials and tribulations of life and what it does. And it's the thesis of it is just stay steady. Don't get too up. Don't get too down. Life goes on. And that's when things are bad or just remember that. I used that quote the other day. Life goes on. It came from the great Harvard poet Robert Frost. When they said tragedy or anything in life happens, just remember 3 words: life goes on.
I thought that came from the Beatles.
No, they stole it from Robert Frost. But that's the key, and there's different ways of saying it. My dad used to tell me, in order to be humble and practice humility, is that, hey, son, never forget that the graveyard is full of irreplaceable people. Never forgot.
You are known for giving a good quote and talking about these subjects and being a straight shooter, and that feels more and more dangerous in the social media age, and as I just think more people are more sensitive about more things. Does your PR background ever kick in and stop you from saying what you really want to say because times have changed?
It's a great question. It does a little bit, but not too much. As long as I'm sincere it's harder for me to obfuscate and edit than it is for me to be frank. And I'd rather be frank and straight up with people. But I've got to watch it. Of course, you can't. People have different things, and I never want to offend anyone or be that guy. But I also don't want to be to the point of where I'm over analyzing, over editing. That's why it's always worked for me being frank and being honest and being straight up because I know who I am. I'm very comfortable with who I am.
My last question before I get to some rapid fires to close us out here. On the one hand, I think of a boy from Baton Rouge selling peanuts at Tiger Stadium who goes on to be the LSU AD, and I think this must be the dream job. On the other hand, all these interests that we're talking about and your curiosity and I just think the way your mind works, I could see, there's one more job you want after this before, and it could be outside of athletics, before you decide to fully retire. And it's quite frankly hard for me to imagine you ever doing that. But those two contrasting thoughts in my head, I figured I should just ask, do you feel like there's still something beyond being at LSU, your alma mater, that you want to do professionally before you ride off into the sunset?
I really don't give it a lot of thought, Joe. Now, I know that sounds, my identity is not in my job. My identity is to who I am: a father, a grandfather, a husband, and I'm not the athletic director at LSU. I'm a steward of the LSU athletic department. And I view it that way. And when it comes time for me to exit stage, I'm going to do that and hopefully do it graciously. And in my opening press conference, I feel like I'm going to live up, and I hope I'll live up to what I said. And same things I said at Washington and at Texas A&M, that I left them in a better place than I found them. And that's the end of the day. That's all I want to do, and all I want to be, and hope I've had a good effect on that as the steward of this place. So who knows what's next? I just hope I'm healthy and everything goes well. But no, I don't want to be Pope or King or leader of the world. That's not been an ambition, and it's not something that I give much thought about. I just want to be content, happy, and I'm very content. I'm very happy, and I just want it to continue.
You just mentioned being Pope. You went to a Catholic parochial school. We now have our first American Catholic Pope. Are you sure? There's now precedent.
Good man, and way out of my realm.
Well, that leads us into the rapid fire questions to close us out, and something that also might be out of your realm. But the first question is, if you had to coach one LSU team for a day, which sport are you picking?
Football.
Why?
It's just, I spend so much time managing and doing it, and it's just a love affair. I love the intricacy. I love the team nature of the sport. It's so intricate with 11 players on each side of the ball and how they meld together. And I just like building that. As a former tennis player, I've kind of been there, done that with individual sports, but I just like the team sport concept of it, and really, really enjoy it.
If I have one meal in Baton Rouge, where should I go?
Gino's.
And what should I order?
Arancini.
Okay. That's my favorite question I like to ask, because I plan any trip I have around the meals I'm going to eat. So now, If you were an LSU baseball player, what's your walk-up song?
Probably Led Zeppelin, The Ocean.
Nice. Why?
I'm showing my age. Just fire.
Okay.
I love that thing. Opening riff is just.
What's more fun, a CFP national championship game or going to the Final Four?
You know, how? It's like asking who's your favorite child. If I had success in both of them, I'd be just as good. I was just as happy when Kim won it all, and I was just as happy when O won it all. So I can't say I was either more elated one way or the other. I'm going to take the chicken way out. It was kind of co-equal.
Well, my next question was going to be, which is your favorite child? But I'm guessing you're not going to answer that now.
I'll even go ahead.
My actual last question, you may have already answered. It was going to be if you, let's not talk about an epitaph because that's depressing. But if we were talking about a legacy in one sentence, you may have already said it with kind of, you left it better than where you found it. But beyond that, is there anything that when you look back on your career, and maybe it's not just athletics, right? It's the PR firm too. It's the roles with the chancellors at two massively important schools. When you think about your career, anything else from a legacy standpoint you hope is attached to your name?
Yeah, I mean, I hope they saw that I did that, what I just said. I left a bit of it, I found with great empathy, with humility, and just doing it the right way. I mean, I hope that's how that's how I want to be viewed, and no other better way to say it. That's what I strive for. Not always successful, but it's a daily struggle. But I try to do it in that best way possible. I didn't piss and moan.
Well, Scott, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with you that I didn't enjoy, and this was no exception. I have probably a million other questions I'd like to ask, but in the interest of your time and our listeners, I think that's it. But thank you very much, not only for your collaboration when we've worked together and worked with the league, for your insights today and in the past, and I think just the continued friendship I'm very, very grateful for.
Same here, and it will be continued in our tradition. For a meal, a glass of wine, or we have to do it. I'll look forward.
Apparently at Gino's. Now I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, to our listeners, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us. My email is jeff@nbgt.com. And you can also connect with us on my personal LinkedIn or the Navigate page. Again, this is Jeff Nelson with Navigate, joined by Scott Woodward, Director of Athletics at LSU. Thank you for joining us on Navigating Sports Business.